love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, then all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again.
Hello and welcome to SDAQ&A. Hi family, SDAQ&A tribe, good to have you here. And my very special guest is Gillian Ford. How are you, Gillian?
I'm great, thank you.
Well, you're looking good. Good to have you on the show again. Today, I love our title. It's the title of your new book, Bye Bye, and Here's Why. Yes, hold it up for us to see. I have my copy, and it is a great read. I was talking to someone the other day, and they said Gillian Ford is doing a fantastic job in not only the volumes that you've released on Glacier View and Des Ford and all the interesting surrounding scenarios and topics that lie around that, but in making people aware of this incredible bunch of people in the 30s and 40s who dared ask questions of the church. They found themselves shut down, marginalized, ostracized, kicked out. And when they said, hey, this is my Adventism, it soon turned into be leadership, what shall we say, excommunication, kicking out, bad treatment, ad hominem attacks flying everywhere. And this is 90 years ago. So anyway, this person was just thrilled that you've been putting all this work in and that this book is out. The thing I love about this title, Bye Bye and Here's Why, it doesn't necessarily just focus on that group of people. And you've really uncovered some really important reasons as to why people leave the Seventh-day Adventist Church or are pushed out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I think we'd probably agree that leadership has a little bit of a role to play in that. And this is not to criticize leadership. This is to say, hey, guys, you're a good bunch of people. How about allowing all the voices to be heard and to ask questions and have honest civil discourse and dialogue on the topics, which, Gillian, is what you and I do well. We don't always agree, but we always have great dialogue and stimulate interesting conversations that seem to go on and have a life of their own. So, Gillian, I'm going to hand it over to you and tell us what we're going to talk about today in more depth.
Well, I've highly organised my material. I've gone from very complicated down to relatively simple, but who knows where I'll go on the day. This is volume 10. Now, volume 10 and Bye Bye, this came from that. So they're fairly recent. This is not proofed. This is not proofed. So there may be some boo-boos in them. And this one, I've been in contact with, I'll tell you who R.T. Vowless was in the program, but I've been in touch with his grandson. He's a busy boy.
Fantastic.
To try and get a little bit more detail on what happened to his grandfather, because nobody knows about these people.
Right.
I've sent this
Right.
material to Milton and Gilbert, and this is a new thing. Their responses were actually on Dale Ratzlaff's website, but because it said R. Vowless and M. Vowless, nobody would know who they were. So I've tried to put them in a context, and I've actually found a lot of stuff. So that's part of this book. All right. So what happened with this book is that usually somebody sends me some material. I thought, if we're going to do next week, let's talk about this book, because there's a lot more stuff in this book that's quite important. So what happened, I was sent an article through Kylie Burling, who does my proofing very wonderfully. Her father, Ross Wainwright, wrote an article about Wally Drain. You say, who's Wally Drain? So very few people know about him either. And he's in this book. So he's in both books. And from there, I went backwards and sideways, sort of putting together stuff. And I ended up in volume 10, as I'll explain later, with people who were put out in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, and the 70s with Ron Numbers. So I've got a series of people who put out. Now, they were put out for different reasons. One was extremely liberal, and he was put out because of that. One was completely over Ellen White. That was Ron Numbers. So they're put out for different reasons, but a lot of the focus is on how the church treated them. And it was shabby, and the church should be ashamed. And of course, they did the same thing to us. Anyway, so we put down that. And first of all, I've done this chart that you were going to put up.
Yes, I'll bring that up for you.
Now, I did this in InDesign and made a PDF of it. This is a simplification of a simplification of a simplification, just to give you an idea of who are in this
Who
book
are
and
these
why
people in
they're
the
in the
book?
book,
Yeah, and just a
and
quick
why other people aren't.
plug. Book club is on this week. It comes on about an hour after our program on Friday, but there won't be a program this Friday or Thursday night. The next two shows I'm away, so when I won't be around. There's no show tomorrow. There's no Good News Fellowship this week, unfortunately, but book club is going ahead, and Rochelle will post the link to that in SDAQ&A and other places. Back to you, Gillian. I just had to get that in there.
So to give you some of the background, and there's a bit that's not actually on the chart. Now, what I did was, this was a page in InDesign that is 20 by 30 inches. So it's big so that you can have a chance at reading it. Still not very readable. And I did it in 36 point, just for you.
Thank you.
So let's have a look at this chart. Now, the bye-bye background, it's about, these are people. There are 5 of them. There's Robert Thomas Vowles and Monica Ching Vowles from New Plymouth, New Zealand. In 1993 and 1933, 1935, they wrote their reasons for leaving the church. Now, these are highly intelligent people. A very fascinating story and very apropos. The things that we think we came out in the 70s, they knew about back then. And Monica, I'll go into her because I've got another thing that I'll put up. Well, I may just read from it to tell you what she was about. So they're 2 of the people in this book. And they're basically, I've done a history of them and I've done all this bibliographical stuff. They were unknown, as I mentioned. And as I say, I'm still waiting for the grandson to give me a few details on Robert Vowles, because they split up just to complete my biography. Anyway, and then we're on the right at the top, we've got Basil Barnard. Now, the reason he's there is these 3 are not in volume 10. So Basil Barnard was featured in a 2009 Good News for Adventist magazine that was put out in New Zealand, Australia by Richie Way. And so they had the article that Ross Wainwright about the Vowleses came partly from that and partly from Wally Drain's daughter. And then I noticed Basil Barnard was in there, and he wrote down, he was somebody, and I'll mention more about him later, but he's on the same issues: Ellen White, justification by faith, and the investigative judgment. Then I've got Robert Grieve. He's really 20 years later. But the interesting thing, and here's the connections, Monica Ching went to Avondale in 1924, and that year the head of the department was W.W. Fletcher. And in that same class was R.A. Grieve and David Sibley. So you take the notice, who knew what when. Now, W.W. Fletcher left the church in 1930. He was a GC vice president. He was a high official in Australia. He'd been friendly with C.H. Watson, who was the Australasian Division president from 1926 to 1930, then became the General Conference president 1931 to 36, a period that was very difficult because of the Great Depression. And Gilbert Valentine just did a program on the Sydney Adventist Forum, which hasn't yet gone up, but he sent me another one, so I know pretty much the contents. And when he became General Conference president, he really wanted, he was very friendly with Fletcher. He'd worked with him for 17 years. He really wanted to have a worldwide Bible conference and go into all these problems and to teach the scholars of the church how to handle problems like Fletcher, because of the leaders who didn't have the information, they all thought that Ellen White couldn't be wrong and the church couldn't be wrong. So they presumed there were answers to these. Now, in 1923 to 24, W. Prescott, who also, if you read Gilbert Valentine's Esther article, he doesn't really explain that W. Prescott and W. Fletcher had the same views about Ellen White, justification by faith, and the investigative judgment. And he wasn't put out of the church. He had a lot of enemies like J.S. Washburn, who was a real right-winger, who would have liked to have put him out, but because he was so eminent and so highly regarded and very old, they left his membership in. But I've got a letter in this book. It's also in one of my other volumes. Can't remember which one. Remember, I have got an index of the 10 volumes. So if you want that, or if you want a copy of this thing that we've got put up here, this chart, I'm happy to send them to you if you message me, as long as you give me a bit of time, because I'm frantically busy. Anyway, that letter from Prescott to Willie White, son of Ellen White, tells you his problems.
Is that your alarm clock?
I'll switch the phone off. I actually switched it on airplane mode, but it didn't work. Just hang on a minute while I...
That's all right. I love how your camera follows you around. It's got a good little feature to it.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
When
I
you
didn't
hold
see
it,
that.
when you hold up a book, it zooms in, and it's really good.
So that letter is in here because it will show somebody else who wrote down how they felt about how the church was dealing with Ellen White and the doctrinal problems. It's a very good letter written to Willie White in Prescott's final year. So that's in this book. All right. So where was I going before the phone rudely rang? Now I've got Lou
You're
Weir.
talking about Prescott and how he and Fletcher had this shared
So
views.
Prescott and Fletcher pretty much had the same problems. And Prescott was at Avondale teaching. He came over to fix the school. He was an educator. And he was there half of 1924 when Monica Vowles was there. Now, she came from New Zealand. Her name was Monica Ching. I actually knew her sister. I came into the church in New Plymouth. And I did a lot of work to try and find out who she was. So that, I gradually put all this together. Right. So when she was very bright and she was going to do medicine. So she goes from Avondale. She's there 24 and possibly another 2 years. And at the end of 27, she's in Sydney waiting to get on the boat. And this was a large group of Adventists going back to America, including W.H. Branson, General Conference president at the time and grandfather of Numbers. So you see these connections. Who knew what when?
Yes.
There's no doubt she would have talked to him on the ship. She doesn't mention it, but she would have. So when she goes to PUC, she's going to do medicine. She does the year there. Then she goes to Loma Linda. And I think because of her mother's health, she decides not to do medicine. And then she goes to Walla Walla and she graduates from a general course. She comes back at the end of 1930. But what happens when she's leaving that night before she leaves, she listens to somebody who left the church. Now, I actually think it was possibly W. Fletcher, because by the time she writes her piece, he has left. So he's talking to her mother, and her mother doesn't do a good job of answering what he says. So this piques her imagination, and wherever she goes, she talks to the leaders. This is what makes this paper so fascinating.
Yes.
So she goes to PUC, she goes down to St. Helena, she talks to Willie White, she goes into the archives, she talks to Leroy Froome, another man, Kern is his last name, and others that we wouldn't know. They're not... but they come up elsewhere. So everybody she sees goes down to Loma Linda, talks to the faculty, talks to them. And so this is her big beef. If Ellen White received these great controversy, for instance, in early writings from a divine source, why does the church have to edit it?
Yes.
So she asked this wherever she goes, and she says they evaded it. She said Leroy Froome, she knows that he was in the midst of all this hubbub about it, but of course they sort of pat her on the head and did nothing. So a lot of her document is about this situation because, anyway, I'll get onto that more in the next file.
It's a good question.
So you get the picture. Yeah. So she would know Sibley. She was a student in 1924 at Australian Missionary College, which became Avondale University. And she was musical, so she sang. She also did class presentations. I found quite a lot of stuff of her in the record. So she's intelligent, a person to be counted with. People wouldn't have known who she was. So, okay, we've got the idea of the vowelists, and she comes, well, I'll do that later. Sorry about that. So here in the second paragraph on the left, I've got Lou Weir. Now, in volume 10, I said to, when I was doing the book, I said to Milton, have you got anything else? And he said, well, there's Lou Weir. And he had written about 3 articles that were available from the Ellen White Centre, but never been published. And he'd done them for a particular book that never happened. So I said, oh, I'll put those in. So Lou Weir goes in. Now, Lou Weir was put out of the church in 1943, but he stayed in the church till he died. In the end, they sort of invited him back in. I don't know whether he came back in or not. But his big beef was about prophecy. So he was pushing for a spiritual Armageddon, not a literal one. And they set him up in 1943. They set him up with a woman. Now, when you read the story, and she basically said that the brethren were wrong, but they used it to fire him because he was taking meetings for Bible studies. He was in the church, even though he was treated terribly badly. And so, but he's not on this subject. He was a perfectionist all his days. Okay. And AFJ Cran's didn't agree with him, I think, at least at the beginning. He probably changed his mind later. You know who AFJ Cran's is? He was the father of Russell Cran's. I don't think I've put him on this chart, but he's important in the picture. I'll explain to you later.
Can I just say something just there, just to throw in as you mentioned that, someone from New Zealand who is going to come on the show later, I won't mention names now, they left the church recently, showed me a letter from Cran's to this person's grandfather, I believe, and he fully admits that he has all the doubts, is asking all the same questions that all of these people you were talking about were.
So was it John W. Brough?
Oh, look,
or B-R-O-U-G-H?
let me have a quick look.
You know, by this providence that keeps dropping documents in my lap, John Den sent me that letter, probably with the same one.
You keep
yesterday.
going. Oh,
yesterday, and I'm going to read it.
Yes, good. I think it probably is the exact same one. No. I want you to read it.
Okay.
I'll keep looking.
I won't do it now.
I'll keep looking while you keep going. And I think it is the same letter.
So AFJ Cran's, he's watching.
It's AJ Cran's that wrote this.
AFJ, it is.
AFJ.
Same thing. There's only one.
Yeah, only one A. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so it's the same letter. So the same person.
Well, it might be. If it's another one, please, I want to see it.
I'm pretty sure it's the same
I'll watch
one.
it.
Yeah.
So there you've got Robert Thomas and Monica Ching vowelists, and you've got Basil Barnard. He wrote 4 brochures. I put them in because these people are intelligent, articulate, and if you want to know the arguments in the area of Ellen White, some of Ellen White, justification by faith and investigative judgment, the things that Des got fired for, this is why they're in the book. But Lou Weir isn't, because he's on Armageddon. But I put him in because, you know, to sort of explain the context. Okay. So Robert Grieve, reading off the chart, knew Monica Vowelists at ANC. He was in New Zealand in early to the mid-1930s as the preceptor of Longbourn. When the vowelless couple wrote their papers, he almost certainly got a copy and read them. Almost certainly. So that would have influenced him, because he wouldn't have been able to answer it. Now, I can't prove that, but makes sense. Then he was sent to Queensland and he became the Queensland president. Now, then I've got Nathaniel Carter Wilson, who was Australasian Division president from 1948 to 1951. He resigns in 1951. Now, he left under a cloud, misbehavior with a young woman. It probably was not overt. He was just unwise.
Who was this?
Neil Wilson's father, Ted Wilson's grandfather.
Yes.
Because that's been well hidden.
Yes, I've heard that.
Because he didn't really get punished. He ended up as Michigan State Conference president. He was there when Des was there at Michigan State University and spoke very well of Des. He was also at Dallas.
Some have said he was kind of being trained up or groomed to be the president of.
Yeah, he was going to be in 1954 when they had the next general conference. He was slated to be the next president. But Australia, because I've got the notes, I put them in my volumes, from the GC and from the Australasian Division, although it wasn't called that then. But and you can see who's present, who knows about what happened with Wilson. So it was unwise behavior. And he ended up still going. He didn't become the General Conference president, but he's Michigan State president. It's a very high position. So because he's put out, they bring in now Francis Clifford. And Francis Clifford, if you read, I think Gilbert did his Esther article, he's a wonderful man. He's a writer, he's got charisma. But I think why they brought him in, because W.H. Branson, well, I think he was chosen because he knew Carter, Wilson, Ted Wilson's grandfather, in Africa. And they say in the notes, only tell people on a need-to-know basis. So he was a friend, he'd worked with him for years, so they bring him in. Now, he's very conservative, okay? So he's the one who's going to fire Grieve. In fact, 6 North New Zealand ministers in 1 year. I've got them here, the 6 dismissed. 2 probably because an evangelist thought they wouldn't cut the mustard. And the reason for that was the evangelist, who was probably had Asperger's and had certain ideas for what a minister should be. They both had Neil Smith and John Richardson. They had very good character and they were pastoral, but that wouldn't be valued. And I think that's why they were dismissed, but it was 6 in a year. Okay, so we've gone down here. Now we're back up here. So I want you to see that there's this thing going on with Wilson. A lot of people like W.H. Branson, I keep pointing at the screen, but you can't see me doing it. Down in the middle in the box, W.H. Branson is the GC president from 1950 to 54. And then he has a heart attack. So they bring in Neil Wilson, Nathaniel Wilson should have been president. The 4 people who go over from Australia vote him out. He loses by 4 votes. Instead, in comes Richard Reuben Figure, and he's in from 54 to 68. Now, he's a progressive. He's the one who permits Leroy Froome and R.A. Anderson to write Movement of Destiny and Questions on Doctrine.
Yes.
And then when Pearson comes in, he takes both of them out of publication, but it's too late because Questions on Doctrine had sold something like 137,000.
Wow.
And that's been, as you know, the reason I'm mentioning this is because I know it appeal to you.
Yeah.
That's been a bone of contention ever since.
Yeah. Well, it was the manifesto for the new theology that was about to come.
Now, with Grieve, okay, okay, Clifford becomes upset with Grieve because he's very outspoken. He was very bitter. He's like probably even worse than Walter Ray. And Des interviewed or spoke with Grieve for a whole day in 1958.
Wow.
And he said to me he was right in what he said. But he couldn't stand the way he talked about the brethren. You know, Des was a gentleman, so he wouldn't have gone for that, but he agreed with him.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is an interesting thing about Grieve. Now, I'm doing this to show you that how I've put all this stuff together from different sources, because you get the picture. Back in about 2012, Doug Hackelman, who I've told you about, who's doing a triple biography on Cottrell.
Yes, I can't wait for
Now,
that one.
he pretty much he's pretty liberal. He comes from where Bob Rinsmead is, but
Yeah.
he knows how to talk the talk anyway.
Yeah.
And he's a thoroughly good historian and writer.
Yes.
The author of Adventist Currents in the 70s and early 80s.
Incredible.
Yeah, amazing. So he's been working on it for many years. And he sent me, I'd never know why, but maybe because he thought I'd give it to Des, which I did, the first 34 chapters of this book. Now, this was 13 years ago. And my big job now is to keep encouraging. Just because your mother lived to 107, don't think you will. You need to do these books.
Yeah.
So he's done volume 1, and you will find these books dynamite.
I can't wait. I mean, I've been waiting 5 years.
What I'm trying to show you is that because it's all been covered up, you sort of think of Des as an outlier, that he suddenly came out of the blue and said this. So they, you know, they lied about Des, they misrepresented him, they did the same with me.
Yeah.
And so people think, you know, oh, he's a terrible person. This goes on today. I know, because people tell me what, when they talk about Des, you know. Anyway, when I read Hackelman's book, there are all these people who got put out, same issue as Des. And Des was just the latest in a long line, and probably the best orator and a pretty good scholar. You know, Cottrell said he knew more about this subject than anybody else in the church. Des thought that Cottrell did, but, you know, they're both very knowledgeable.
And it's where it came to a head with you and Des and Glacier View. That's where all this came to a head. And when I
it had come to a head before, but it was hidden, so nobody knows about it.
Well, it had been trying to come to a head, but it hadn't really reached public awareness. And what,
now, volume 10, I've talked about the light bearers, the people who've tried to bring the gospel to the church, and then you've got the candle snuffers.
Yeah. Who
often are from the elite families.
Yeah.
And they just come along and snuff it for 5 people. They badmouth them. And it's happened over and over again. Now, Monica Vowles, in my book, but in her article, I've counted them. She mentions 66 people that she knew about who'd left the church.
Yeah.
Some of them you'd know, like Ken Wright.
Yes.
The 2 Ballingers, Conradi, Prescott and Fletcher and so on, but there's loads of them. It's just that you don't know about them.
No.
And Jill's telling you.
Yes.
So Jill won't be very popular.
What I love about this is when I embarked on, and it was prior to 5 years ago, I mean, SDAQ&A has been around for a while. I wrote a post about Des, maybe 10, 11, 12 years ago. And that's when it all started, my interest in exploring this deeper. And I always found a lot of information from 1844 right up to 1919. And then I found a lot of information from QOD 57 on to Glacier View and now. But what's so important about what you're sharing today, and I hope everyone is grasping the significance and goes and buys your book, and you hold it up one more time so people can see it, is that this information is filling in the gaps from 1919 to 1957. And it is showing the thread that has run through from the beginning right to now, and where it particularly came to a head with you and Des in 1980. Back to you.
All right, so back to the chart. And the connections are very important. So let me see. Now, here's an important connection. And I didn't, you know, Lowell Tarling's little book, which has been republished, so you can get it. The Edges of Adventism. If you're serious about studying Adventism, because you somewhat, I felt sorry for people like C.H. Watson, and he's not on here. He's on other charts. He's part of it, but somehow he and Monica Vowles go like this. He's in America, she's in Australia, and so on. So he's not particularly here. But the reason he wanted to have a Bible conference that never worked out in 1932, we've heard of the 1919 one, and it said there's no Bible conference till 1952. And that conference, there were 400 Bible students, and Leroy Froome took all their papers and put them into the Movement of Destiny. So Leroy Froome in 1952 onwards, see, and then they reach out to the evangelicals. And Branson had made a statement in 1952 that the church, the ministers were to read Adventist authors and Ellen White. So he's doing the same thing that happened in 1919. He's covering it up. Don't read outside. Whatever you do, don't read outside.
Yes.
Although Leroy Froome and R.A. Anderson were great readers of outside evangelical literature.
Yeah.
You may not agree with them. I'm just giving you the picture. You've got to make your own decision on all this stuff. So an interesting connection here from Lowell Tarling. Okay, R.A. Grieve was an evangelist listener, and he went out, he got married, and he went to South New Zealand. Then he went as preceptor, as I mentioned before, at Longburn in about 1936. And then he goes to Queensland about 1937, but he's there when the Vowleses write their papers. As I say, he almost certainly read them. So he's Queensland president from 1948. I'll come back to the link with Lowell, because Lowell interviewed him. He's Queensland president from 1948 until 1955. He's a North New Zealand president 1955 to 59. No, 56. There's a typo in there, Jill. So I'll correct that by the time I send it to you. So he's only there for a year and he gets fired. Now, he's already in trouble with Clifford. Clifford doesn't like what he's teaching, because he's teaching righteousness by faith, the gospel, and he's not teaching the investigative judgment. Now, in volume 10, I've got some of his articles, and they're very good. So he's in both books, but there's more in volume 10.
Right.
I've just taken what he said, because this is the idea of the book. 4 of the people out of the 5 are very competent writers and thinkers. So they're writing down why they left. Wally Drain, the story by Ross Wainwright is in there, but he didn't write much stuff. But he's on the same thing, so I put him in. This is so that people who don't want to buy a big book like this, they can get it, conveniently on its own. So you get the picture. Anyway, back to Grieve. 1955, and you've got to remember the date. 1957 was Questions on Doctrine, and Leroy Froome and R.A. Anderson, they're concerned about some of the things people at Advent and its teaching, so they're moving towards the evangelicals. So he comes over to Australia, probably to see his mother, and Clifford says to him, please go and straighten Grieve out. Now, what happens, and Lowell Tarling points this out, is that instead Grieve turned Anderson around on the nature of Christ. So Grieve is teaching the sinless nature of Christ. Anderson goes back and I've got correspondence. I don't think it's in here, but it's in here, which Harry Ballas gave me, from R.A. Anderson to Grieve. And he's saying to him, look, don't say much. Don't speak to fellow ministers because things are going to change. And of course, in the end, they didn't, but that's what he thought. So what Lowell says, and I think he's right, is that Grieve had a global impact because he affected R.A. Anderson. So that's a very important connection. All right. So then if you go to the left, you've got the 6 dismissed in New Zealand. And here again, I had no contact with Harry for the first 9 volumes. And then when we did that program, redoing Harry's story, and I'll tell you this again next time. How are we going for time?
We've got 40 minutes. Plenty of time.
Okay. So Harry said on that program, and I came on at the end, that he did an interview with Des, and it wasn't published because it was different. You know, there was Des, he was an outlier, and then all the people who were fired because of Des, or all the ministers who left. So they left Des out of the PhD. So I come on at the end and I said to him, Harry, if you let me have that interview, because clearly it will be important, I'll do volume 10. Now, at that point, that's all I had for volume 10. And of course, Harry went off. Well, I'll tell you that later, but he went off to Greece and then he went to New Zealand. And so it was about 5 or 6 weeks before I actually got that stuff. I did the volume 10 in less than 3 months. So I had other things come in. One was the Wally Drain article, and that led to all this stuff. Just amazing how it happens.
One thing leads to another.
But because I'd contacted Harry, I told him what I was doing. And it turned out he knew a number of these people. He knew Wally Drain. He'd interviewed him a number of times. He knew Grieve.
So many resources.
Plus, he said, I've got decades of North New Zealand Conference notes. So he gave me the notes for this year, 1955 to 1956. Now, Harry's got a busy life, enjoying retirement, so he's like herding a cat, a bit like you. But I did manage to get it from him.
Yeah.
And so I've got the notes of where they were fired. All right. So
wow.
What happens is Wally Drain is already in New Zealand, and he's in his 30s. And I can't remember. I won't go into detail. I'll do more when I talk about volume 10. But he's already in trouble with a local church, a man called Strange, the Strange brothers, had something to do with it, reporting him. And he's got an interesting background, which I'll expand, but he's an idealist and a voracious reader, very like Des as a child. Comes down to his father and says, I'm going to be a missionary to, can't remember where it was to, and his father's watching, got his feet in the oven trying to keep warm, and he says, go to bed. And anyway, it's quite a funny story. So while he's over there, he's a big hit with the kids at Longburn because he's teaching the gospel, no legalism. And he's talking about Stephen and what Paul saw on the Damascus Way. Wonderful stuff. So a wire recorder has come out and people are recording him. And so Clifford, now I'll try to do this fast. So Grieve is sent to New Zealand mid-1955 for his own good, and it's told by Grieve he's upset that a general conference man, R.A. Grieve, had been ministerial secretary for 16 years. He was a big player. So G.C. Mann supports Grieve, and of course that makes Clifford mad. Mm-hmm. I don't know, that's not very, I shouldn't say mad, disquieted. So he sends Grieve to New Zealand in the middle of 1955 and warns him, get your act together or you're out. Now, by looking at stuff, I found out that Grieve had actually went to New Guinea a couple of months later, September 1955. This is just not part of well, it is in the book. It is in this book, both books. He goes up to New Guinea and he's in a plane crash. And the plane takes off and those planes, many of them came down. There's 2 missionaries on there. I won't remember the name, but I'll have more detail when I talk to you about it later. So there's 3 passengers and the pilot knows they're going down. So he turns the nose into the ground. So he gets killed, deliberately takes the brunt of it. 2 others get highly damaged. One never really works again. R.A. Grieve, they're in wooded land. He's the one who becomes conscious. He has to contact people outside and he ends up in hospital as well. So he's not in great shape. This is September 55. Now, he's a hero, but does that count with Clifford? No. While he's over in New Guinea, he calls Wally Drain to Sydney and basically tells him the Riot Act. And again, I won't go into all the detail. I'm giving you too much detail now. So in March, I've got April, but it was March 1956, Wally Drain, he set up the story. The way he was treated was appalling. Done behind his back, no explanations given, fired. And his daughter is 12 years old. Now, I say this to say this is how the heartlessness. His daughter is just baptized. They've just been told to move to Auckland to be part of the Ratcliffe evangelistic team. So he's been away speaking. He comes back, he's exhausted, he has to move. And when he gets there, he's sick. They call him in. He finds there's a discipline meeting. So it's all a ruse set up. And they won't let him off because he's sick. It's just appalling. And then they disfellowship the whole family. So here's this little girl, 12.
Wow.
Loves her dad because he's a really, really good man. And he was never bitter with the church. So she's writing. She's written a lot about what happened to her dad.
Wow.
So that's what Ross Wayne
now.
Hey?
How old would she be now?
About my age, I think.
Right. Wow.
I'm not going to tell you my age, but I'm old.
So she's in her 50s.
I'm nearly 81. She might be a bit younger or a bit older, but she's in the ballpark. Well, 12 in 55. She's the same age as me.
Right.
A year younger.
Oh. Have you spoken to her or just read her material?
I've written to her and had email. She's sent me stuff and I've sent her stuff. I just sent her the AFJ Cran's letter today. Yeah. So she's happy with that I'm doing this. And she and her father, they took a wonderful attitude. You know, we only went up after the church kicked us out. But you imagine the pain trying to work it out when you're 12.
Incredible.
And then 2 others. So in September, I think it's September that year, 1956, somebody uses the wire recorder. It was Mev Whitaker's uncle. He's told me which Whitaker it was. It'll be in the book. I might not have mentioned it, but he secretly recorded Grieve, and he was called in and they played this and they fired him.
Wow.
And then Stanley Billette and Darrell Wyborn, 2 students from Avondale who were working with Ratcliffe, they got fired a bit later. I can't remember exactly, but it was after that. And recently I was in contact with a relative of Stanley Billette because nobody knows what happens to these people. And she said he and it must have been his wife went into a communion, commune, be a hippie commune in the 60s, and the family lost complete contact. They don't know what happened to them. And see, when young people get fired the way they did, because there's no explanations given, don't have their answers. They're just disloyal and treated like dirt, snuffed out by the candle snuffers, I call it.
Yeah, I love it.
They are so idealistic. You know, for somebody like Des and me that were older, we could look back at it and say, well, God had a purpose in it. But for a lot of the ministers got put out after Glacier View, and people like him, they're young and idealistic, and they
Young
can't
people
believe,
and their young families.
yeah, and they can't believe the church would treat them like this.
Yeah.
Same thing happened at the memorial with the church pastor. He said, well, I think I'll go ahead anyway. He just couldn't believe the way the people he trusted, and I could name them, treated him and threatened that his children to the third generation would not be able to work in the church if he went ahead with the memorial. And look, he was there when somebody from the GC told me at the memorial, at the lunch. So people who tell me stuff, it's not gossip. All right. So now I've got this dotted line in the middle going down to David Sibley. Now, David Sibley, I think he was at college in 1924 with Grieve and with Monica Vallis. And of course, he went up administratively. So when Des comes back in 1960, the thing about Cran's, which I haven't got on this page, AFJ Cran has been to the seminary. He's teaching at Avondale. He's actually there in 1931, where for a year Monica Vallis is there. There's no doubt she would have talked to him. Now, that was back in the early 30s. But in 1955, he comes back to Longbourn, and he's there. I don't know whether he's on the committee. I thought he was. I'll have to go back and look when Grieve gets fired. And then the letters that he wrote to Des in 1955 and 58 come directly from that experience, because he's been to the seminary. He knows there are teachers there who openly in class don't believe in the investigative judgment. And he's warning Des, because Des is about to go. Des was his reader, and Des is fairly innocent. So he's writing to him one letter about Ellen White, that she's not an authority. The other letter about the investigative judgment that's not biblically accurate. Important letters. And then Des, of course, goes to the seminary and he finds out that this is true. Now, just see that I've got everything in. So he's witnessing the trial of the six. And he writes to Des to warn him about the faculty at the seminary who don't believe in the IJ. So we're now finished with this chart. Now,
it's a great chart.
I've got a photo. If I send it to you,
yes,
if you think you can put it up, because it comes from a slide off Gilbert's talk. Might take me a minute. So you can talk for a minute. I'll allow you.
Yeah. You'll allow me to talk. No, it's fantastic. I love listening to this content that you're.
I'll have to email it because I can't get off.
And I can't.
You go ahead and chat for a bit while I send you this.
I can't access email from here while I'm on the show.
Oh, okay. Well, we won't do it.
Can you? You can't hold it up on your phone.
Well, I can just. Let me just
see what you can do. And while you're doing that, just a reminder that there are no more shows this week. I will be away. And however, book club is going ahead Thursday night, I think around 8 p.m. Pacific time, 1 or 2 p.m. Aussie time. That will be advertised in SDAQ&A on our wall, and the link will be put there, and Rochelle Anonymous will go ahead with that. And the book we will be reading next in SDAQ&A Book Club is Prophetess of Health, a study of Ellen G. White by Ronald L. Numbers. And you mentioned one of his relatives today.
Yeah, he signed the death decree for Ron Numbers by his attitude in 1952. And really, when you read Ron Numbers' book, there's nothing wrong with it. No, he was so good. He was so good to the brethren. They treated him terribly. So anyway, in this photo, which is in, if you want to watch one of Gilbert's several slide programs on C.H. Watson, recently done about 2 weeks ago at Avondale, but it's not yet up. So give somebody a nudge. And Spectrum did it too. It's not up there. But he sent me a place where I could access it. And I spent all last Friday transcribing. It took me the whole day, 50 minutes. All right. So here's the Seminary faculty in 1956. And it's got 7 arrows pointing at different faculty. And Gilbert says, because in the last few years, Siegfried Horn's diary has come out, and of course he's read that extensively, he names 7 people among the faculty who didn't believe in the investigative judgment. And all these people who keep on, because of really sentimentality over Ellen White, insisting that the investigative judgment is correct. Look, Clifford Goldstein, Lloyd Grolleman, Stephen Beagles, wake up. The evidence is not on your side.
Yeah.
So anyway, here you've got Earl Hilgert, Winton Bevan, Edward Heppenstall, Alger F. Johns, Roland Loseby. Oh, and it's Siegfried Horn, I've mentioned him. And Daniel Walter, who I couldn't find much about because I always go and look at these people online and find out what I can. Now, but then Gilbert comes in and he talks about Heppenstall and how he makes progress and nuances. And the implication is that they may have made progress on the doctrine of the investigative judgment. So I wrote a letter to Gilbert and I said to him, Gilbert, what Heppenstall did and what the church has done since Glacier View is to completely reinterpret the investigative judgment as good news.
Yes.
And Heppenstall started it. And of course, this is why he didn't support Des at Glacier View and was partly responsible, along with John Brinsmead, for Des being fired, I might add, although we always remain friends with Heppenstall. He came up with the idea that the investigative judgment had nothing to do with the saints, the judgment of the saints. It was about the vindication of God. So God was on trial.
Who came up with that, did you say?
Heppenstall.
Really?
And see, Heppenstall would not have believed in last generation theology, but they've used his argument to say that there will be a last generation who will keep the law perfectly and thus vindicate God. And that is a heresy.
It is,
an
but it's a logical extension of Ellen White's
God
teaching,
was with
though.
Christ on the cross, and God vindicated himself.
Exactly.
We don't vindicate it.
It's
and
blasphemy.
if we did, all these candle snuffers and deceitful people in the church who constantly covered up the truth, are they going to be the last generation? Anyway.
No, well said.
All right.
Yeah.
So now I haven't started on the book itself. I knew this would happen.
Well, this is a good summary for next week. How about we look at can you read some excerpts from the book? Or you go wherever you want to now, but we've got about 10-15 minutes. And we can easily divide this up into
because
next
if
week.
We've got 10 or 15 minutes. How about I read you AFJ Cran's
perfect
letter, which you think you've received. It might be another one.
I received personally from this person and read it with them and was blown away by it. And they're coming on the show as well to talk about it.
So essentially, hang on, I've got to do this so that you don't get the sideways view. I've got 2 screens. I typed this out for me. And it's just a couple of pages, so that will do us. And this will go, I've actually already added it to volume 10. And people who've bought volume 10 and don't have it, I'm willing to send it to you. And I've also put it in the Bye-Bye book.
Yes.
I put those up this morning. So
Bye-Bye and
from
here's
now
why.
on,
is available now on Amazon.
It'll change a little bit because I'll have more biographical details, but that's not essential. But from now on, I just have to have it approved. If you order within a couple of days, it will have this letter of Cran's in it.
Okay, good.
So I got it from John Den, who sent it to me. And it's probably like page 3 or 4 because it doesn't have any page numbers on it. And it doesn't have a signature on it. And originally it didn't say who it was to, but I asked and his daughters gave it to John Den. And it's somebody I don't know anything about. If anybody knows anything about John W. Brough, I tried to find on Google. Up came John Loughborough.
The person who gave me the letter is his daughter. So I'll put you in touch with her as well.
All right.
Chat.
See.
And she's been inspired by what you've been saying. She's been inspired by those 3 shows we did on Valis and the chats about that. So she's really been inspired and gone through the material.
Well, look,
sent some to John and sent some to me.
I sent it to Milton. He said, you've got to put it in volume 11. Well, Jill squeezed it in volume 10.
And great.
Anything to put off volume 11, but I suspect it may happen. It's a very important letter, but you know, when people look for historical sources, they want a date on it and who it's to, and it's just 2 pages. Now I've typed it out, but I can send my typing and not proofed, of course, and the 2 things that I got.
And at the time, he didn't want his name associated with it, and that's why it's not signed. But
that's possibly true.
But this was sent to the father or grandfather of the person that gave it to me and gave it to John Den.
But you see my point.
They know it's to their father or to their grandfather. I think it's the father.
You know, if I send this letter to PUC or I send it to Gilbert, who will ultimately put it in. I think I've sent it this morning to Gilbert. And of course he may have seen it.
And this can be verified, and I'll put you in touch with the lady. And this can 100%
You're looking for the
be
historicity. So we want to know, who did he write to?
Yeah.
What was he asking?
Yeah, 100%.
To have something. Otherwise, people will say you just made it up.
She can confirm this. It was a letter to her father or grandfather, and she has the original copy. I've seen it. I've literally held it in my hands.
Right. Well, I just want a little bit more information, but I'll send it as it is.
I'll know put you in touch with her.
Because he wrote the same stuff to Des, and I've got those in probably volume 2 of my books. Remember, my books are sources for documents that you'd have trouble getting elsewhere. Also, Cran's took a forum in 1980. That's in one of my books. I think it's in volume 4. I'd have to look it up in my trusty index. And he's saying essentially the same thing, but I think I said to you, Milton read it and said, this is a very powerful document. Okay, here we go. Letter AFJ Cran's to J.W. Brough, early 19... Well, I've got early 1990s, but I've been told it was the early 1980s. Now, concerning your inquiries, found a typo. Oh, I have to change that in the book. In regard to Adventism and the present situation in the church, I must be honest and tell you frankly that I've been forced to change my views considerably since I taught at Avondale and Longbourn. Now, he was very careful what he said.
Yeah.
So he didn't really get into trouble, but he was highly regarded, extremely intelligent, and he didn't have Des's enemies. Des had a lot of enemies. I have had to admit that I could no longer harmonize many SDA doctrines with Scripture. Now, Lloyd Grolleman, listen to this. Such doctrines as the investigative judgment, the seal of God, the remnant church have had to be abandoned. I found that views on these topics, when all is said and done, are based on Ellen White, not on Scripture. In fact, Ellen White's writings contain numerous errors, doctrinal, historical, scientific. beside many statements which are plainly contradictory. I do not question her sincerity or zeal, but facts are facts and simply cannot be explained away. As you state in your letter, some of the attempts to unite Ellen White with scriptures such as Hebrews are very poor. In fact, many of our best Bible students, another typo, now admit that Mrs. White is not in harmony with the Bible on many subjects. Yet amazingly, we are asked to accept her writings as a continuing and authoritative source of truth, providing for the church, comma in there, guidance, instruction, and correction. Dallas Statement of Beliefs, 1980. And of course, John Rosey has often talked about this change. Such assertions seem to me to cancel the boast that Adventists hold to the Bible alone as the basis of their faith. And if that be true, the church is doomed to failure before God, no matter how many souls it may baptize. I was ordained to preach the word, which means the gospel of our salvation. We should be loving and broad-minded enough to agree to disagree on things which are not essential to salvation. But when any teaching would pervert the gospel of Christ, we agree with Paul's anathema, Galatians 1:6-9. I personally cannot subscribe to the doctrine that when a sinner repents, his sins are forgiven but not blotted out, but remain on record to be investigated after 1844, as Mrs. White teaches. On the contrary, Jesus assures me I've already passed from death to life. I will not have to face judgment. See John 5:21-27. Jesus himself knew that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were among the saved and could assure the thief on the cross that he would be in heaven. He knows his sheep. He doesn't need to investigate the books to discover if we are entitled to the benefits of the atonement. Great Controversy, page 422. The doctrine of an investigative judgment at the end of the Christian era completely annuls the fundamental truth of justification by faith alone, which assures us that now there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. It is nothing less than a revival of the Pharisaic doctrine of salvation by works. What assurance can anyone have if salvation is dependent on being able to measure up to a detailed inquiry into every wrong word, every selfish act, every unfulfilled duty? Great Controversy, page 482. No wonder Adventists are afraid to say, I thank God I'm saved, and look forward to the time of trouble. I'm trying to switch this phone off, but it won't switch off. And he should be watching this program, I should tell him. So where did I get to? And look forward to the time of trouble with fear and trembling. So far as the 2,300-day prophecy is concerned, the Jews found ample fulfillment, proof of its fulfillment, in Antiochus Epiphanes and his defiling of the temple. One only has to read 1 Maccabees 1:4, typo, 41-61, to see how accurately history fulfilled the predictions of the treading down of the sanctuary and the cleansing to make the little horn on a goat said to symbolize Greece is not only crooked reasoning, but a distortion of historic fact. For how could a time period commence in 457 BC when Rome doesn't come into Palestinian events until 168 BC and overthrow the sanctuary till 70 AD? Yet we're told Rome was to pollute the sanctuary for 2,300 years. There's much more I could say, but perhaps I've said too much already. Would you kindly accept what I've written as confidential, as I know I would find myself in serious conflict with the powers that be were you to use my name to others. I've already been accused of disloyalty. My desire is not to disrupt or leave the church, Adventist, but rather to enlighten and help others in a quiet way. I believe God is endeavoring to lead Adventism out of error into advanced light. And I hope, I'm rewriting this, I'll go back and check it, for the few years that God sees fit to give me in helping others to gain the full assurance of the gospel, I'll be glad for you to use any thoughts I've expressed and which you can accept as you wish, as long as you do not use me as an authority. Unfortunately, our administration, at least many of them, do not favour freedom of expression. This has resulted in suppression, cover-ups, misrepresentation, and persecution. So that's the letter now. It's
Can
not
I
2
just
o'clock yet.
can I just say something?
I've still got 9 minutes, and I've got
Yes.
2 other things to read.
I'll be quick.
But
when I
but
read
that argument he's using about Antiochus is very well explained by Robert Vowles in this book.
Yes.
So this is why I've done it. If you don't understand the arguments for the gospel and against the church position on the investigative judgment, they're in here.
Yeah.
And they're not said by Des. So they won't bias people.
When I literally had that letter in my hand a few weeks back, and this lady and I were having lunch, I immediately meant to send it to you and forgot.
Yes, you're a naughty boy.
But it blew my mind because it confirmed to me, you and I, the only thing we have differed on is I've had a go at the people like Crans who knew this stuff but want to keep it quiet because they feel that they're bringing what was it he said, advancing, overcoming error and advancing new light or something within the church, which is demonstrably impossible to do. They've never succeeded. So I've erred in some ways at having a go at and cajoling.
No, that's not.
Cran.
No, I'm not upset with you doing that. No, we've got some theological differences, but I'll talk about that next time.
Those things I don't even really. The show is not about my claims or others' claims. It's about giving people a chance to speak, and people are being shut.
Yeah, I understand. That's why I love you dearly.
But what I've loved that I've learned particularly from you in recent times, in reading the volumes and this book, is really, I don't want to say the word blame, but I will until I can think of a better word. The blame lies squarely on the shoulders of these leaders who allow this to continue, and how sad to think that it may continue even more.
They sort of think they're right. Let me just finish off with this. It's not a long statement, but it relates to something that Monica Vowles said. Because, Monica Vowles, her paper is pretty much, and I might have said this before and you've already read it, she's talking about her beef with Ellen White. If she received all this material from heaven, why does it need editing? Yeah. And she found only deception and aversion. Nobody would answer her questions. And when they put them out, the leaders would not come and talk to them. And that's pretty usual. They won't deal with it because they can't answer it. But
That's
anyway,
right. Yeah, they won't deal with it because they can't answer it. Good point.
So another slide from Gilbert and I, it's sort of like we're doing a dance. He's working in the 30s and I'm working in the 30s and we're helping each other. So another slide where Watson has gone to America and he deeply wants to have this Bible conference where you invite people from all over the world. He thinks that he's got an answer for Prescott and Fletcher. He doesn't, but he doesn't know that yet. So some of it is a difference in ability to reckon with the problems. I don't mean that to be condescending, but it probably is. Anyway, when he gets over to America, then they have huge problems with Conradi. Yeah. In Europe, and Conradi was a division leader, and these people I don't know much about. I have to go and study about it to talk to you about it. But anyway, he's really Fletcher in Australia, Conradi, and what Gilbert seems to say, now this I've transcribed, it's not from a slide, is that F.E. Belden, who was a musician, you know him.
Yes.
I'll read you the statement. He seems to imply that he got Conradi going. Now,
Wow.
I'll have to ask Gilbert about that. Anyway, so Gilbert says, here's C.H. Watson wanting to do this conference. They've got financial problems. He got them out of he was an accountant and a businessman, so he helped put the church on a footing. And he wants to have this conference and invite people. They know who they're going to invite. They've got the subjects and the speakers. But it doesn't happen because there's too much trouble politically, meaning with the government in Germany and Russia, and it takes it. And so he decides then, well, we should start a theological seminary. And that's essentially what Gilbert is doing the talk about, how C.H. Watson's really the person who led the church into further education. That's where he's coming from. But he says in Europe, Conradi had come to similar conclusions to W.W. Fletcher from his own study. And he says what had happened was that about 1927, this is when monikers go into America, Frank Belden, who was a nephew of Ellen White and a famous musicologist in the Adventist Church, author of many of our Adventist hymns, had become disillusioned with the church over royalties that they weren't paying him. Now, you may know the story. And he thought they should pay him more. So in an act of revenge, he makes available an original copy of the Word for the Little Flock in its unedited and unrevised position. Now, the Word to the Little Flock was Ellen White's vision about the shut door. Okay. The church had later taken out some statements that talked about the wicked world that God had rejected and probation closing for the whole world, because they put up a pretense that Ellen White had never actually taught it, but she did.
Yes.
And it was in this document. It was also in great controversy. And so they took those statements out. So Belden circulated the original.
Go the musos.
With the statement still in it. And the way Gill expresses it, this is what got Conradi going. And that caused problems in Europe and in Australia, serious problems. Now, this is the bottom line, because it really did suggest to the thinking person that Ellen White had made mistakes.
Yes.
And had given a wrong interpretation of Matthew 24 or 25. So the reason that statement's important is because it supports Monica Vowless's argument about great controversy. What had happened was the reason for the editing was they took out those same statements about the shut door. And that was that the church was teaching in 1844 that probation had closed, and up till 1951 that the door was shut, which was a last day setting. And so, of course, when they got to 1951, that didn't happen. Then they pretended they'd never said it.
That's right.
So you cannot.
Where can we find that article that release that he did of the unedited version to the Little Flock?
Ask Gilbert. He'd know. But I'll see if I can find it.
I saw him the other day in Currumbong on the side of the road chatting to someone.
He gave me this. He gave me this source to look at his talk, because I knew that there would be stuff in that was important for what I was doing, and there is.
He doesn't want to come on the show though. I've been too nasty to the Gospel Adventists.
Right.
Hey, boy, what a great program today, Gillian. I
got through what I wanted to do.
Fantastic. And
I
tying it off with the muso revealing that the original video.
I ended up with the muso.
Yeah, I love it. Can I book you in now for this time next week, and we'll do a part 2, because I want to get into the book even more. And
well, I do have a separate file. I haven't actually got into it.
So let's.
But you see how the evidence, the church has got to face this.
I know. Do you think they ever will? Are they ever going to face it?
I see Gilbert. He comes up and he said that Heppenstall made progress. Heppenstall did not make progress.
No. This is this weird denial.
Because to reinterpret the investigative judgment, because what happens, I was just talking, I know we've finished, so it's going to be 2 o'clock and 1 minute down there in a minute. But I just talked to Robert Cook, who was fired in South New South Wales. Now, a lot of these people you don't hear about It's done on the quiet.
Mm.
And it took time. He was fired in New South Wales over these subjects.
Yeah.
And it's happening a lot.
See, this is
so what
this
happens
is,
in
yeah,
practice, the scholars have this way of explaining the investigative judgment that's really about vindicating God, not us. And they call it a pre-Advent judgment. So it takes the focus off 1844, which is a very subtle device.
Yeah.
No longer about 1844. And of course, but if you go against what Ellen White taught in Great Controversy on the investigative judgment, you're out.
Yes.
Your people in your church will report you, and ultimately,
you're out and you're banned and you're cancelled in one way or another.
So I got everything said that I wanted to. So
Thank you, Gillian. I've loved our chat today. I can't wait. Can I lock you in next week? Can we confirm it and let everyone know this time?
Yeah,
next
I'll talk
week,
about volume 10, because volume 10,
6:30 p.m. Pacific
I've been
time.
doing this one at the same time.
I
And
know.
since I've done 2 others.
The output of
I've done Des's other 2 theses.
Yeah, fantastic.
So gangbusters.
You're doing a great job. And just one more
I'll
time.
talk about this and how it came to be.
Yes, let's do that. And I want to get you to read some bits and pieces from Bye Bye as well.
I'll do that first.
Yeah. Now, I just want to also, just before we quickly go, I'm doing a lot of work on this separate channel that I've set up. This is season 2, SDAQ&A, and I know Rick has also done some great work. If he's still watching, Rick, can you put the website you've set up there, please? And I'll bring that onto the screen. This is a love job for me, everyone. I'm just absolutely loving it. And I do the 3 shows a week, 2 SDAQ&A, 1 Good News Fellowship. As I mentioned, tomorrow and the next day, there'll be no shows. I will be away. This is the only show this week. But I put extra time into this other bringing season 2, which was incredible. And the reason I'm talking about it is that it combined with Gillian's 10 and hopefully more books and Bye Bye, we are creating a resource, and Gillian has said this too, that down the track, we hope people can gather together this information and compile it even in ways that we haven't been able to, because we're just giving the resources. We're just putting it out there. So this season 2, as I said, I do 3 shows a week, at least 10 to 15 hours on those shows. This that I'm bringing on the screen now is an extra thing that I'm doing, and we're up to 26 of the 86 programs, but I need your support, because this now edges into time where I could be doing other work to, literally put food on the table for my girls. And so I hate to raise it, but I really need your help. If you guys believe in this project and you'd like me to finish it and have one day I can bring this onto the screen, and you'll see all 86 interviews there with people from Milton Hook to George Knight, John Carter. I can see him there, and a very interesting one I did with Alden Thompson. And there's one coming up soon. Which one did you like, Gillian, that you said?
Larry Christoffel.
That's right. That's coming up soon. The one I did with Ron Numbers is coming up soon. And so
have you done Lyndon Rogers? I think you have.
I just did Lyndon a couple of weeks ago. It's incredible. Yeah, there it is there, number 23. And I hate to ask for donations, but it's either not do this project and go and do other work so I can actually live, or it's to say, hey, here's my guitar case. If you enjoy the content, please throw some if everyone watching just said $2 to $5 a month, I'd be able to just finish this project. And I want it to be out there. I think it's so important to have all 86 programs out there on the internet. Now, if you don't have any money and you can't help me in that way, and I hate asking, I hate it, because I believe it's an important work that I know Gillian puts a lot of time in, and the amount of money,
and a huge lot of money,
and a huge lot of money and time, and it's okay that it's not as much coming back in, but there's got to be something coming back in. So I encourage you to shoot me a few dollars there, and to go and buy Gillian's books, because it just helps us continue doing this kind of stuff. And
Well, this is my ministry, so I've sent a lot of books out.
yeah,
We always did this with books. We never did it for the money.
and both.
But can I just ask you that when you put it up on YouTube, if there's a way of keeping it up, because this one's an important one,
So
because
what?
the programs disappear up, and I can never find me when
So
I go
they
back.
never disappear from YouTube, but you do have to go in and click the live button, and they'll all come up in order. So you go into YouTube,
Okay.
and you can see, if you look closely into this screen here, see it says home, videos, and live. Often people are in the home or the video section, and you won't see them.
Oh, all
So
right.
you have to click the live button on YouTube, and they're all there in order.
Maybe you should put a note up about that, because
It's a
dumb old me didn't know it.
But they have been disappearing from Facebook. Facebook is doing the takedown, and most of season 2 is gone now. This is the only place now that people can see season 2. So the last thing I was going to say is, if you haven't got a few dollars to throw our way, please at least go and find this site, season 2, unedited and complete, and just subscribe. Just subscribe to it, watch some videos, click like on it. That really helps. But
So where do we find it?
You'll have to go and have a look there. It's if you just type in SDAQ&A season 2 unedited and complete. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but there it is. And you can so Rick just asked, are there copies outside of Facebook? No. This is the only place now inside SDAQ&A. I randomly put them up, and over here at SDAQ&A season 2, its own YouTube channel. That is the only place where it'll all be in one place. Facebook, I'm pretty sure they're all gone from Facebook. I don't think you can watch any of this material anywhere anymore, unless you look through and find them on SDAQ&A here on this platform. But what I'm doing is putting them, like Gillian has done with her volumes, all this information into one place. And when it's done, we're going to have a big party. Gillian, I might fly you down here, and we'll do a show sitting side by side, and we'll bring this up. We'll bring this up on the screen, and all 86 that you can see here. There's 26 at the moment, so we're getting there. So and if you just little things like liking, subscribing, watching, it really helps. But if there are a few of you, if you've got some spare dollars, there's my PayPal, paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. Otherwise, it's not going to be finished. I hate to say that. I'm going to just have to go and do more gigs, like I'm having to do this weekend. I can't do 2 shows because I'm away doing gigs, because I've got to make a living. Got to make a living, and I've got, my daughter turns 13 next week. Anyway, and Angela has reminded me too. She is sponsoring the George Knight episode, which is coming up soon. That was a landmark episode. So thank you, Angela. I haven't forgotten. I've written that down. And if anyone would like to sponsor a program, you can contact me about that as well. Anyway, that's a big rant, but it is important, and the rubber is hitting the road. I'm either going to have to stop. I'll always do the 3 shows, maybe even more shows, because of the way it can be done on the spot, released. It's out there. But this project of season 2 in one place on YouTube, unless I can make a valid reason to be putting the time in instead of doing other work and making money, it's just going to stall, and that'll be it. And there's some incredible interviews that need to be out there. So sorry for the high pressure plug. I don't think I've ever done such a high pressure plug, but if you'd like to support what I do, donations would really help. And
just one thought to finish with.
Sure.
Monica Vowlis, in her book article, she mentions, I counted them, I think I did say this, 66 people, leaders, some of them very prominent, not the ones you know, but still prominent, pioneers, left the church over these issues. That's it, back in 1930. And
she wrote that list, or is it available? I'd love
it's in the book. You read it.
Is that in the Bye book, or the one at the volume 10? Because there's some overlapping info.
Well, the Vowlis, see, I didn't want to put the Vowlis article. I was already full up with volume 10, but it's also different.
Yeah.
Because it's moved to it was on Dale Ratzlaff's website, and I typically, there's been differences in how Des and Dale, they were always friends, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to. I wanted to do it separately, so I did.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to, like, I've been in and out of that book. This weekend, when I won't be back until about Tuesday. I'll be staying at different hotels. I've got the book in my suitcase. It's the only book I'm taking with me. So every night I'm going to be doing a more concerted read through it, because I think it's such an important work. Everything you've done is amazing, but this is kind of a missing link that just makes everything make sense. So thank you, Gillian Ford.
You got 1 minute?
Yes.
I might forget it next week. But with Grieve, I didn't have anything he'd written. I couldn't find much about him, really. And then when I was looking on Google, up came an article by Gilbert, with I Say We're Dancing, doing different things, but working together without knowing it.
Yeah.
And up comes Grieve, connected with an article he wrote, which is probably in his Heppenstall book. Did it in 2024. And I thought to myself, I'll go and look at the footnotes. There'll be something in there. And I found an article that had been written by Grieve, actually about a 30-page article, explaining why he left. He and the 4 of the ministers that left in 1956. And it's very erudite. We're so biased because he's been said to be a terrible man. So that's in both books. But that's how I found it. That's what it takes. It's a lot of work.
Here's a challenge for you. Next week, I think you've accepted. So it'll be Tuesday night, 6:30 p.m. USA Pacific time, and 12:30 lunchtime Aussie time on the Wednesday. Try and get Gil Valentine on the show and promise him that I won't talk anything about my cajoling of the gospel Adventists or the progressives. I just want to hear you and him talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I can't always get Gilbert's frantically busy.
Imagine if he came on just for half an hour and I just go off to the side and you two just talk about this and just compare some notes. Then he can go and then we continue on with the chat. That's
He's probably a bit scared of me as well.
For people to be scared of you and me is just ludicrous.
No, he does come and visit me.
They've made bold claims, but I'm not even going to push. I just want to hear you and him talk. That's a little challenge for you anyway next week. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate your support. By the way, Rick is doing a great job helping me making a lot of this stuff.
Thank you, Rick.
Found on a website, and has offered to even help putting up season 2. The hard thing is that the time it would take to download and the hard disk copies and send them, it's more that in that time period I would then be doing that to set them up online. I really appreciate your offer though, and if there was some way I could just dump it all on you, but there's editing I need to do that only I can kind of assess if it's got to be in the show or not at the beginning and whatnot. But I really appreciate that. Thank you, everybody. There's some really nice comments coming through, and I'll just bring them up on the screen so that you guys can see them. And yeah, great to chat, Gillian, as always. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm relieved because, you know, I was never really a speaker. And if you listen to Colin Standish, he said I was a hopeless teacher.
Someone said to me the other day, they said, your and Gillian's shows are getting more and more professional.
Oh, boy.
I'll take that. So we won't make this one of my long goodbyes. See you all next week. I'm not here tomorrow or the next day. See you next week. Back with Gillian next week, same time. See you then.
Bye-bye.